this is when things started to piss me off a little bit. The World Heavyweight Championship match. Seth Rollins versus Kane. My immediate thought was, what? Did I miss the Intercontinental Championship? I was about 10 minutes late to this pay-per-view. I had to actually go back afterwards and watch the first start of the Del Rio match. So it was like the Intercontinental defense happened like in 5 minutes. That's way too short for an Intercontinental Championship defense. But nope, it was just the order of the matches was very wonky. Now, people have tried to claim that the Owens versus Ryback match was going to be the cool-down match because they want something that you could give you a breather or a bathroom break between the World Heavyweight Championship match and, of course, the main event, Lesnar versus Undertaker. I don't personally buy that, even though it might be true, and it's a bad decision if it was, because it's not like Kane versus Rollins was ever going to be a showstopper. It wasn't ever going to be epic. Maybe it would be good. Maybe they'd, keep my interest the entire time, but it wasn't going to be anything hardcore. So I think that would have been fine to use as the breather match. And at the same time, all this fucking does is continue to bury the World Heavyweight Championship, which unfortunately they've done a good job of doing these past few months. Seth Rollins has been a horrible champion, and it's not just that, they've just made it feel so irrelevant, unfortunately, because of Brock Lesnar. Granted, it's not as bad as the whole Cena versus Rollins at SummerSlam, where it was on the middle of the card, but I still think that this should have happened right before the main event. Now, my personal feelings is that Bray versus Roman Reigns probably went on longer than they had planned, and so they needed a certain amount of time allotted for the World Heavyweight Championship match. So they just decided they'd go ahead and get that over with first. So then they could tell that story in its entirety, and then whatever time left they'd have for the Intercontinental Championship match, which unfortunately wasn't much. So in terms of the writing, nobody wanted to see this. Kane has been booked so badly that he should be nowhere near the title scene right now. But I will give the writers credit for trying. They did try to make a compelling storyline with some interesting twists and turns. And I actually have to acknowledge that I was sometimes entertained by it. I thought Kane played his role very well as the corporate Kane. He had some very funny moments. I liked how Seth Rollins was actually saying or delivering new promos instead of just repeating the same shit over and over again, which unfortunately he's gotten in the habit of doing these past few months. They tried to make Demon Kane threatening, but it's hard to take that seriously, just seeing how he's been booked. And there are other times where it was totally awful, like, God, that stupid Raw where the Authority was late, and they kept calling Kane, and they were having discussions on the phone. How many fucking times do we need to see that? But still, they tried, and I will give the writers credit for that. And the quality of this match was something that I would have easily seen on Raw as a main event. It's not satisfying as a pay-per-view match. Personally, what I would have done was have Kane decimate Seth Rollins throughout most of it. Seth Rollins punches him and he kicks him, and Kane just no-sells and then just brutally tears this guy apart, only for him to get sloppy during the one scene where he's going to choke slam Seth Rollins through the announce table, and Seth Rollins counters, gets that powerbomb in. That was a cool spot, or it would have been really cool if the table actually broke, but obviously it didn't, so it kind of made that a little awkward to watch, but still, props for trying. But he does that powerbomb, and then that's when Kane gets hurt. That's when he starts showing signs of vulnerability. And that is when Seth Rollins goes on the offensive, does a lot more damage, and ultimately wins. It would be a clean win, give Seth Rollins some credibility, while at the same time, it would make Kane look more dangerous. It seems so odd to me seeing Kane no-sell chair attacks, no-sell a broken ankle, and yet Seth Rollins' punches and kicks, his basic punches and kicks, are doing more damage than that. that just draws attention to the fact that, yeah, wrestling is fake. And I think they just kind of missed an opportunity to tell a much more compelling story where, Kane seems invincible until, one oversight and one devastating counterattack by Seth Rollins kind of takes him out, and he never quite recover. But as it was, like I said, it was a standard Raw match. It wasn't awful, I guess, but it wasn't that compelling either. But at least it's over with. I knew they were going to have to do this sometime. I personally would have preferred it to be a three-way match instead of having Kane versus Rollins be the actual defense. Like, if they had somebody else there, okay, that would have maybe been a little bit more interesting. But at the same time, because Lesnar versus Undertaker is the main event, I guess they don't really need this to sell tickets. So it's like, yeah, if you're going to do it, you might as well do it now. Should have also been, I think, a Hell in a Cell match, too. I don't know why they didn't do that, but, not a big deal. Now we have the Intercontinental Championship match, Kevin Owens versus Ryback. And boy, I never thought that I'd be saying that the worst match of the night was a Kevin Owens match. And it's not that this was awful in the traditional sense of the word, as much as it was just very anticlimactic and underwhelming. I didn't think that a match of this caliber would be very short, but it was. It was actually an incredibly short match, which is why I personally feel that Bray Wyatt and Roman Reigns went past their allotted time, and so they had to kind of cut this down. Because even though like the pacing's not bad, it never really catches fire. Just when you think that, okay, this is where it's going to start getting good, it suddenly ends. And it just kind of like, wow, they really built up Ryback to nothing. That's all I really felt. Like, Ryback looked bad by losing this quickly, even though he was dominant throughout most of the match. I mean, they put him over Rusev. He practically squashed Rusev. I don't think that's happened yet. And you'd think that they'd want to protect him more, but no, he loses to Kevin Owens rather quickly and abruptly, and it's just very disappointing considering, Ryback is better than people think he is, and Kevin Owens is, of course, very good. And I actually thought their first match was a lot better. Now we get to the main event, the Hell in a Cell match between Brock Lesnar and Undertaker, and pretty much take everything I said about Bray Wyatt versus Roman Reigns and magnify it because it works for the same reasons. First it starts off a little slow, but then it gets more and more intense as time goes along, and you really feel like these guys are really trying to hurt each other. And at times I was really concerned for The Undertaker because you hear the stories about like how he collapsed last time, once he got to the back. Then, of course, the first match, Undertaker was concussioned. So, you're like, oh, come on, please don't hurt each other too much, guys. Brock Lesnar starts bleeding really badly, and at first I'm thinking, is he blading himself? But then you hear that he had, he needed all these stitches, so it must have just been a legit serious cut. I just wonder if Brock Lesnar's face is very vulnerable, because it seems like he gets busted open quite a bit in his matches, and I always heard that in MMA he got cut up quite a bit too. But no, it's just violent, gruesome, and yet it's telling a really powerful story. And they built up The Undertaker to look so strong in this match. Yet at the same time, it doesn't take away from the mystique surrounding Brock Lesnar. And I thought it started getting really terrifying when Brock Lesnar starts pulling apart the mat, revealing the wooden panels, and you're like, oh shit, what are they gonna do? And then then Undertaker kind of overcomes Lesnar momentarily, and you think, oh shit, it's going down now. And then Brock Lesnar low blows him, and that's pretty much leads to the finish. And it made sense because it's vengeance, and that's what The Undertaker did to him last time. The only thing that I had an issue with is that there wasn't really much of a story told between here and their last match. I think they had one major interaction, and otherwise they just kind of relied on, the marquee to sell itself. I think it would have been better if maybe they had like one more Raw where these guys had some major confrontation. But still, the match itself was really good, and the they started using some very dangerous maneuvers, but at the same time, you once again really buy into this blood feud that these guys are really trying to hurt each other. They're trying to kill each other, and there's something just powerful about seeing Brock Lesnar win. He gets outside of the ring, and then he collapses, and then Undertaker's struggling to get up, and when he does though, you're like people are thanking him, doing the "Thank you, Undertaker" chants, and you feel that emotion, and then suddenly Bray Wyatt shows up, and the entire family ambushes Undertaker, and he fights valiantly, but they ultimately overpower him and just take him away. Now you're wondering, well, what's happening now? Are they going to try to brainwash the Undertaker? Is that the last time we'll see the Undertaker? Was that his big, retirement moment? Was the last time we'd see him as him being dragged away by the Wyatt family? Is this going to be a new feud? Is this what Survivor Series is going to be based around? The Wyatt family versus the Undertaker and whoever allies he could muster. I've heard that apparently they attacked Kane on the last Raw, the Raw following this. So I don't know. It's interesting thinking what's going to happen now. I'm interested, and that's always a good thing. Is I'm interested in seeing the next chapter. I'm willing to forgive all of WWE's transgressions, because even though I may have disliked a lot of the writing, I thought these matches were generally fairly satisfying. Granted, not the Ryback versus Kevin Owens one, but all of them had something to offer, and the end result is I thought this pay-per-view was okay. I didn't mind any of the finishes. I thought the people who should have won, won. But more importantly, I feel like there's, a change in the winds. Like I said, when it comes down to is I am now intrigued in what WWE does next. So, all in all, Hell in a Cell was kind of successful. It wasn't a great pay-per-view. Like, very little about it I think is going to stay within my memory outside of the Lesnar versus Undertaker match, and maybe the Bray Wyatt versus Roman Reigns match. Del Rio going over Cena just depends on what they do with Del Rio. If immediately they kind of give up on him and make him a jobber again, obviously that would have made this entire, or the show in terms of his big return, go to waste. But I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt. So awesome job, or not awesome job, but good job, everybody. So yeah, I'd recommend Hell in a Cell to an extent. Not quite as much as NXT TakeOver Respect, but it's nice to feel a little bit positive after being the caustic critic of wrestling after so many months. So that is all I have to say. If you want to read my written version of this, check out the Show More section. Follow me on Facebook, where I review all the various Raws, NXT episodes, SmackDowns, and sometimes Main Event and Superstars. Follow me on Twitter. And I've done written reviews of Paranormal Activity, The Ghost Dimension, and the Attack on Titan movies, so read those too. And I shall see you guys later.